Are you walking too fast to hear your soul whispering? Welcome to the Leader's Camino, a space where we slow down to explore real conversations with entrepreneurs, leaders, and visionaries at the turning points of their professional journey. I am Martin Frederick Garbers, business coach, former CFO, and pilgrim on the Camino de Santiago. A trusted guide for those ready to exit what no longer serves them and create their next spiral of growth from the inside out. These episodes are interviews from my book, The Leader's Camino, From Exit to Expansion, clients and coaches who share their transformational experience coaching with me. This conversation is a look behind the curtain of a coaching journey that changed everything for me. When I first met Chris Joseph, I didn't know I was standing at a threshold, but he did. In his words, it wasn't just about saying yes or no. It was about seeing whether my hesitation was a real choice or what he called a silent cry for help. What followed was a transformation not only in my coaching business, but mainly in my being. From originally a group coaching to a six-figure personal investment, from controlling the runway to trusting the leap. This episode is about identity, courage, and the unseen force of spiritual expansion in business. Chris was the one who invited me to step into visibility, to own my greatness, and to remember that true transformation isn't transactional, it's relational. In this episode, we explore how a single distinction can change the direction of a life. Why investing in coaching is really about investing in your next version of yourself. And what happens when a coach becomes a lighthouse, not just for others, but for himself. A powerful conversation about guidance, growth, and the inner energy of leadership. I invite you to listen into this deep conversation about my long-term coach, Chris Joseph. As you have been part of this whole transformation journey and a trusted guide for many, many sessions, and we spent probably 100 hours and more together over the whole expansion journey, I felt it opportune and also an honor of inviting you to be part of this project.
Thank you for the invite.
And thank you for being here. Let's go back where we met. So, what do you remember about our first encounter? Where were you? Where was I when we met?
So the first encounter from my memory was actually in a small group session with Rich Litvin prior to one of his online intensives. I think
the first one, yes.
Around the period of COVID. And the thing that struck me, there's a few things that struck me. Firstly, you were in that attic space of your previous office. So there's a wonderful spaciousness to your environment. And I think that was then also mirrored in the spaciousness that I saw in you and your vision. I can't recall, obviously, the exact words you used at that time, but I do recall that you had a big vision for yourself within the coaching world. And you spoke about being a former CFO, and I think you spoke a little bit possibly about the Camino at that time. And I think you were open. You were open to having a guide at that time. That's what I also remember. And you recognized that you were in a new era for you, a new period of your life. You definitely you were making a transition, and there was somewhat of a rite of passage going on. I think the Camino was one rite of passage for yourself, and then coaching was like a professional rite of passage. There was maybe a continuation of the Camino. And I think the final thing I remember is that your heart-centeredness came across. You were clearly in the space of high impact coaching, high end coaching is sometimes called. You were in it for the right reasons. Yeah, those are my memories.
Yeah, I remember it was Matt Chaklovich small group, and at some point you kind of opened the room if somebody was interested in exploring deeper, and I remember that you invited me to explore, to have like a session beyond the Rich Litvin intensive. And I do remember that I was looking for a guide. You know, I had my local coaches that I was working here in Munich, and I was learning from them. They had experience, and when I met you, there was this. I mean, also Rich Litvin and the people, but I liked especially your calmness, your groundedness, the silence, and the depth. And there was also another guy. There was Daniel. He was also in the group, and if I recall correctly, that was the starting of your abundance group then, because we both raised the hands. Hey, we would be open to do this, not at your full one-on-one premium level coaching, but if you could create a group that is more affordable for the young starters that we were, we would join. Yeah.
Well, I owe you a big thank you because yesterday was the 100th call of the Abundance Group.
Really? Wow!
Yeah,
Celebration.
yeah, and that group would not have been created, certainly not created at that time, if it wasn't for the specific ask that you made. And the specific ask that you made was, well, it was more of a question with a hidden ask, and that was, do you run a group for coaches? And I think my response was, well, actually, I've been thinking about doing that, which I had genuinely been. So I think you gave me that nudge to start that group. And you're right, it was yourself and Daniel to begin with, and others joined later on. And I believe you did 2 iterations
Yes,
of that group.
I renewed. I renewed I did
Yeah.
second time, and then the third time we were different setup. I said, now it's time to really step up. Yeah. And let's go to that point, because I think that was a game changer in the way I perceived my identity and also the whole world of coaching.
Yeah.
And I think you masterfully crafted this in the sense that I felt the area of this was scary. And I felt, hey, there's a level of guidance or say leadership, which made it still a tough call, though it was also made it a very, from today's perspective, well, that was a shift. Yeah.
I think the most, for myself, the most significant conversation, one of the most significant conversations we had, but certainly more significant in terms of going forth, I'll use that phrase carefully, was the decision call we had in regards to the first abundance group. And your CFO was strong. We often joke, don't we, that the controller mindset can come back powerfully for you at times, and it's served you well at times. But on that day, I called it out, and I think my words were, and this is going back a few years, but I think they were because you were moving towards not engaging in the abundance group at that time.
Yes.
And my words were to you, if that is, and if this is a genuine no and a genuine goodbye, then that's fine. However, it may also be a silent call for help. And I know that really landed.
Silent cry for help. Yes. I might want to do this and include this in my book. The silent cry for help is a very powerful coaching element.
Yeah. And it comes from a course of miracles, a course in miracles, I believe. almost something, I can't remember the exact way it's phrased in that book, but that's where I first learned it from. And it's a great distinction to hold because it's a binary distinction, which sometimes serves, and it does in this case. And it can be used in many situations. Is this person genuinely wanting to do this, or is their decision one of habit, or is it one that is coming from fear? Is it one that's just simply just trying to keep them safe? Yes.
The level of safety, staying safe, hidden, not seen.
Exactly. Playing to not lose.
Playing not to lose, yes.
Exactly. And the irony, of course, is that inaction, or doing the same as we've always done, is very often the most riskiest thing to do. And that's what I could see. It was very, very clear to me is that you were somebody with the acumen to be an incredible coach, which you have become and are becoming, because we're all becoming. You had that acumen clearly, and a highly professional background. You were smart, excellent English as well as obviously German, your native tongue, great network, and your heart was in the right place. So all of those tick boxes were ticked for myself that I look for in a potential client. So it was green lights all the way for me. And yet there was still this significant kind of blockage of permission for yourself, which is why I was quite strong in my coaching with you on that day and held the mirror up very strongly. And now to give you full credit, because we wouldn't be in this position here today having this call, you dropped into reflective silence in that moment, and you saw that actually it was something you did want to do, and you did want to do it now rather than put it off, and there was massive benefit in doing it now rather than delaying. And that's what you did. And then you even then, as you said earlier, did another iteration afterwards. So that was even more significant, I think, than the conversation we had when you shifted from abundance group to one-to-one, which we can speak about more in a second.
Yeah, and I'm sensing into the energy. I remember it was like, okay, let's like swimming pond. Yeah, let's go jump into the water. And joining abundance group was okay. Let's go to like the 1 meter or the 3 meter board, and then okay, yeah, this is high, and yeah, I think I can do it. And I think there was some fear and scariness, and it's holding to the old. Something around, oh, I'm not earning a lot of money, so the whatever I invest now, I take from, I call it the runway money, that I had my 2 years of money tucked aside so that I have a long runway to test my business. And I had this game of, oh, do I invest now to have a high-level coach aside me that might make it easier to go into the exponential curve? Or do I collect the money first so that I can then invest?
That's a great analogy. That's a brilliant analogy, because you can imagine that physically you're in that airplane that you've just kind of created stroke bought. You're on this runway. You've got a certain length of runway, which is, of course, your amount of cash divided by your burn rate per month. So that gives you an actual time of runway. And you're sitting there with the question of, well, if I had a co-pilot, I could probably take off quicker, but there's a cost to or there's an investment to the co-pilot that's going to shorten the runway. Is a brilliant analogy.
And I remember the big shift for me in the abundance group was being in your energetic space every other week. Yeah. And having this, as we were in the beginning, we were 2, and then you added a few and so on. It became, but it still always stayed a small group. And I felt that, yeah, I have this mindset, and I was 18 sections, another 18 sessions, or was it 18? I think 18 or 16.
It was 16 sessions.
So it was 32 sessions every other week. So it was about a year and a half being in this energy and being in the practice room, being in the gym, And I could see that the people that were joining in later, actually, yeah, what they felt difficult is easy for me now. And so for me, when there's this point when, and I think I was the only man there, the other were all the women around me, and I was at the point, do I renew a third time? Is that really time to renew a third time? And then I said, almost like encouraged towards the others, hey, after 2 times, if I haven't mastered the energy to shift into one-on-one coaching, I better leave. So now let's take me again to this super scary come to Jesus creation call for our one-on-one journey.
The significant thing that happened for you in the abundance group was when you had a month, I think it was a month, where you had 100,000 euros of creations. You'd created 100,000 euros of contracts within a month, and obviously, you know, it's a completely another level to replicate that month on month on month on month, right? However, having that experience, you can't unhave that experience once you've had it.
Yes.
So the pure potential of service, and it's not about the money. The money is always a reflection of the amount of service you're giving the world. I think you saw in that moment that it's really unlimited. Certainly, if you move from one-to-one to group, it really is unlimited in regards to how the universe can pay you back for the amount of service that you can give, and the service you give is unlimited. So I think that really expanded it expanded you in so many ways. What's possible for your business, what's possible in regards to the clients you serve, the depth of the service, even your level of consciousness, I think expanded in that period. I think that gave you the confidence then to say, yeah, I'm not going to renew for a third iteration of the abundance, but I would like just to have a conversation working together one-to-one.
Yes.
What do you remember?
I remember that in the group, I was in some way with the others. Some were sharing agreement here, agreement there, and having this creation energy and learning from each other and seeing what their topics are. And very often also this, oh yeah, we end this in journey together. And as I most of the records, I also rewatched every recording, and today there's all these AI tools that transcribe things, but I mean, it's only 5 years ago that you didn't have these AI tools. That you had to do it manually, sit down, watch it, and scribe it. And I think I'm not sure whether on the Abundance Group, but I have rewatched them all and took out and distilled what was important for me, because I think I'd invested a lot of money, so I wanted to at least take a double hit. So once being in the room and then once reflecting it, and also having some records. And I remember, especially when I asked, you know what, it's going to be scary because I'm going to stepping out of my zone of, well, comfort, but it's definitely something also affordability at that stage. I didn't have the cash sitting in my operational cash to make that commitment that you call up when it means engaging in one-on-one coaching for a whole season. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I'm happy, at that time, let's put numbers on it. It was £60,000, which is about...
It was, yes, yeah. 72,000 euros.
Yeah.
And you had offered me, offer to me 2 options.
Yeah, well, this is an interesting story, very interesting story that needs to be told. And of course, my apprenticeship for a year is more than that now, but that's what it was at the time. Still a significant investment, of course, by anybody's book. And I think the question was, okay, I'm in. What are the options for paying? And I did, I think, give you the option, if it was necessary, of proposing a staged payment, because I don't hold hard rule around that. But it does need to work for the client, but it needs to work for me. But more importantly, it needs to work for the coaching. So that's what I offered you. I said, well, if you can, and I obviously knew that you'd have investments, if you can make the investment now, then it completely changes the dynamic of the engagement and the energy, because the full commitment is made. You're all in, literally all in from the beginning. And of course, you get to share that commitment with your own clients. And that in itself, I think, is very inspirational when clients see that you have been all in on your own commitments. They respect that, and you model the importance of that to them. And that's what you did. That's what you did. And I think, I don't think I've ever had a client, and I can say this truthfully, honestly, I don't think I've ever had a client that's taken paid as much attention to extracting like every ounce of value from the sessions as you have in the session, and then of course post session with rewatching every video, transcription, taking the notes, summarizing the notes, as you say, all manually before AI, and then sending me an email after every session because you're committed to do it. So you follow through on the commitment, every single one, with a summary of what you'd learned, summary of your insights, and then the outsights, the actions you were going to take off the back of it. Just fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you for honoring that. Yes. Thank you for saying it. And I remember there's two elements to this, the jump day. Yeah. I felt in some way I'm jumping out of a plane, first time parachuting. And I remember the shift in my that you prepared for me to have a mindset shift. So it became a different perspective on this investment. You asked me, okay, who do you trust your money to today? I said, yeah, I'm investing in stocks and shares. So basically, I'm investing in the capability of, let's say, if it's an ETF, you invest in 600 CEOs managing your money wisely. Yeah, so I trust that the selection process in the industry will all boats rise with all tide. When the tide rise, all boats rise. So I basically, when the tide rise, I will earn. Yeah, and you shifted and say, you know what? If you have 100% control over the CEO, what changes in the game? I said, well, then I have my controller has more control, and I can really twist and cheek and see where I can make the return on investment. And that was the shift that I used to, you know what? If I have that 72,000 euros invested in the stock market, it will give me maybe 7, 8, or 10% return on a good year. If I put this in my own skill upgrade, can I make a higher return than this 10%? And for me, that was, that's why I'm in the game. I'm in the game to make this a prosperous business coaching game. And for me, it was definitely like more than 10% return on invest on that money invested. I think I can do that. And then as I'd been already doing it, I was pretty likely I was going to do it. Technically, what I did, I moved the money, and I have a company, an asset holding company. So I loaned myself money to make this investment. And I said, you know what? I paid back on a monthly installment from the cash flow that I create. It took me a little bit longer than I had hoped to pay this back, but I kept paying it back. So I used my own bank to finance this investment. And yes, it did have fruit. And I remember that between session, our first real session, like we had the create session, and then we had the start session, and then the second session, I had created new contracts of exceeding that value. And I remember you saying then, well, great, session 2, all paid for. Now we have a whole year we can play.
Casino money then, Martin, casino money.
Yeah, and you shared your Ponzi scheme that, hey, it's money has different elements, but it's also calls out.
Yeah. Well, money is, there's another conversation. The money is something that people get way, 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 way too tied in knots around, and ultimately it's an energy, and it's an energy for utilization. and we should have wisdom, of course, and care in how we utilize that energy. But it's in service of activating other things. That's what it is there for. And you, full credit to you. You took an amount of that energy that you'd obviously gained through your prior work, and you effectively took it from investment in stocks and shares that you had no control over into really making an investment into a business where you had full control over, and you have enacted on that control up until this day. You're still doing that. So I think this is the thing that people often miss about coaching as well, is the compounding nature of the investment, because every insight you get from a coaching session, that insight will stay with you for the rest of your life, like way beyond the length of the engagement. So it's like an impossible task, really, but it's a pretty good task to actually sit, if you can possibly do it, if you can possibly quantify it, to sit with an Excel spreadsheet, write down all the insights from all of those sessions, and then try and put down a lifetime monetary value on them. It's like, and that, I think people just don't, obviously don't do that exercise, a very difficult exercise, but even just thinking about the exercise gives you some kind of feeling, a true feeling as to why, great quality transformational coaching has an incredible lifetime return. Yeah, I've experienced that as well, obviously with my own coaching.
Yeah, and I think what you just said is you cannot undo an experience. I mean, you can maybe fade away some information, like the conceptual truth, concept not really being active any longer because not being used, but an experiential truth, a shift, something that really emotionally popped up, there's no way you can undo that. So we had this, my commitment, I wired the money, I couldn't sleep for a whole week.
You didn't share that part with me.
Well, in the sense that I woke up in the middle of the night. What did I do? Yeah, and my wife. Yeah, it took me a while to really fully disclose what I had done, because I knew that if I asked her before that, she would not approve of such a move. As it was my money in my company, said, you know what, I do it from there. But I had this, and say, out of integrity, to be very clear. Yeah. But I figured it's better to say sorry afterwards and have that transformative energy in the space for a whole year and deliver results than ask for permission to do something so outrageous in many normal settings. And I admit, if I speak to some of my family or friends when I shared this, they were in some were concerned, and others were, I would never do this, yeah, kind of anything. And there were others that, oh, tell me more.
Yeah.
And curiosity was a week behind after we had made this commitment. I met someone, I shared it in a conversation, and he, wow, that's a commitment. And we had a conversation last week, and he wants to become my client and has committed to starting working with me as of May timeframe. So, seed, watering, bamboo. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? So my reflection there is that you've moved yourself into a different sphere through your own commitment. And the commitment, of course, is to yourself. It's not to me. It's to me at one level and to the work at another level, but ultimately it is to yourself and a deep commitment to the evolution of your true self. That's not really what we're talking about here. Because when you make that kind of monetary commitment, you're fully in on yourself as a result of that. That's the real beauty of it. And as you said, there's some who like run from that and panic, some who like are neutral, and then some, and these are the some actually that you really want to be around, because these are the people, as Jim Rohn said, the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. You make commitments like this, it's like a magnet to other people with that same investment growth mindset. And you just end up with better peer groups. And then also, as you just pointed out, better client peer groups as well. Beautiful.
Yeah. So therefore, and for me, it's also, hey, sometimes it takes time. Sometimes, I would love to, but the timing isn't there yet. So and in this particular case, I gave him probably 5 coaching sessions, in the sense of we meeting, having conversation, and he executed all of the ideas, converted his whole business, basically scrapped his old, built it new to the 10x level of the game, all without me being in the room like you had every other week, yeah, doing it on his own. And now he has the fruit. I want to invest. I have the excess cash that I can invest now, and let's play the game now. There's different ways to do it, but I said, you know what? Let's play the 10 game. Make me a 10x offer. Now I've waited so long for you to come to my game. I want you to come with such an outrageous 10x offer that I have to say yes to. And for me, this is where I say, this is my inner child saying, oh yeah, let's play to play.
And you're right, there is no right way. So coming back to the runway analogy, that person took the opportunity of a few short lessons to get some insights on how to fly, and off the back of those insights has flown quicker than he would have without those 5 sort of sessions over the years. But no doubt it's taken longer to get to where he's at than he would have with you in his corner every 2 weeks. And this is the thing, it's like there's no right or wrong. But one thing we definitely we can recreate money. We can always recreate money in life, but we can't recreate time.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's no right or wrong, but it's an important factor to think about.
So let's shift a little bit, because we have been speaking of money, which I think in our coaching agreement, if I really distill it, it showed up in the way of, hey, coaching creation here and there. It always showed up on the dashboard and on the number, because we are in the game of playing a business and not only therapy. But I think my highest value was a lot more in the area of a different space, and why don't you take me from your perspective? What was, I mean, I'm sure you had knowing you now, you had maybe not a secret game plan, but you had a game plan of what you wanted to share with me. You were always prepared. You always brought a new, let's say, puzzle piece, a new piece of the mosaic, so that I could especially adapt my energy, my frequency, my expansiveness. Well, the first group was abundance group. I think my second I would call expansion. And the book that I'm writing is From Exit to Expansion, is the working title right now. And so I perceived our 24 plus sessions that we had a very expansive journey.
Yeah. And because I'm not a transactional coach in the sense that I've got a predefined plan and exact system laid out for a client before we even start the contract, some people make the mistake of thinking that there isn't a plan. But no, there's very much a plan, but it's a plan based on principles rather than a plan based on any specific execution at any specific point. I think that's probably the definition of bespoke. Bespoke coaching is that you are quite literally dancing energetically with your client during a session, but also session to session to session as well. A bit like climbing a mountain. It's like if we're at the foot of the mountain, which we obviously were at the beginning, and you say, look at that incredible view over there, and all you can see is another big mountain opposite you, a cliff face. And so I go, where's the view? I was like, no, trust me, there is a view over the cliff face. Like, okay, I sort of believe you, but like, what does it look like? And I might spend hours describing it and you'll get an impression, but you haven't experienced it. What?
So, and
Yeah.
Ada.
So, so it is all about getting to the first vantage point on the mountain and then looking around. So expansion is a good phrase. I love the working title "Exit to Expansion." I think that works, given the story of which I've been privy to, and um, grateful to have supported you on. I would say I like the definition of spirituality, and this is a word sometimes that, in coaching we kind of dance around and avoid because, of course, it's got, massive attachments to religion, which is something completely different in my view. But spirituality is really um, the definition I love. It's about finding an emotional equivalence to one's conceptual understanding, finding an emotional equivalence to one's conceptual understanding. So you're a smart guy. Obviously, you've got a highly developed left brain, you're analytical, and that's shown by your professional career in finance and planning. So the conceptual understanding was not a problem at all. The 110 videos, the TS Bock video series on how to build a coaching business, you ate that up within weeks. Exactly. And you had all of the notes there, and to absorb that instantly. The one-to-one coaching specifically, even more so than the group, because we've got more time together, was very much about that, finding the emotional equivalence to that conceptual understanding. And it's a bit like it's like a parachute, or like a paraponter that's circling on the thermals, and that aligns, I think, with the confidence flywheel that I have, which is that you've got this commitment. And a commitment is followed by courage, which is followed by an action, which is followed by a result, which leads into building a belief, which leads into building identity, which allows one to make a new commitment on a new level, a new thermal. And I think that beautifully describes the experience week after week after week, is that you were willing to make a commitment. So, for example, it might be to serve a particular type of client and to make a particular size of proposal, and you had the courage to follow through and to do it. Sometimes it didn't, quote unquote, work, whatever that means. We say a no means it didn't work, but that's not true. Just get different feedback. And then at times, of course, there was a yes, and you did have a creation, and that led to a belief. And more importantly, those beliefs started stacking up to create a new identity. And identity has allowed you to make a different commitment at a different level. And that's really about, that spiral has an upward trajectory, but it has an outward trajectory as well. And of course, that is literally an expansion. If you look at the volume of that vortex on that paraponter, going up on the thermals and going outwards, that is expansion. And I think that is a visual that sort of captures the journey, in my view.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, you're refreshing putting me back in that. Okay, where did I hear this the first time? And I think that in the whole journey, I would like also shift something else, which, because it made it so much. We were only seeing each other digital. We had most of our coaching was based on Zoom calls and long Zoom calls. And there was one opportunity where we could meet in person. Remember the big tree?
I do.
And you just recently sent a picture. So,
yep. So that was in London, wasn't it, when Steve Hardison came to give a talk?
Yes.
And also his wife, Amy.
Yeah. Which actually moved me much deeper than, I love to have Steve Hardison in the room, but I was the reason why I got there. But I was really in the room was to hear her speech.
Yeah, and that doesn't surprise me, because Amy is different to Steve. And Amy has got that quiet force about which you have as well. And yeah, there's a wonderful oak tree in Hyde Park. that is, it's an ancient oak. It's even protected by a beautiful kind of cast iron metal railings. And I remember us spending some time together with a few other clients actually in that space. And the oak is a wonderful metaphor, and you use it a lot, because you've got that acorn that grows. Exactly, so small, right? So small. Um, and through the right nourishment, through the right treatment, through the right care, through the right conditions, some of which, of course, are ones would say kind of fortuitous, environmental conditions and rain and water and weather and all of that. And then, of course, some of which are more kind of intentional conditions. And I think coaching evolution is a part of that. There is an element of universe and relationships and who you're going to meet and where, and that feels somewhat serendipitous. But then there's also this big element of intention as well that goes with that, and the harnessing of one's skills and making, allowing oneself to be in the right rooms, and making those investments, and so on. So yes, that tree has become, I think, an important
Reference point.
reference point. Yeah, yeah.
And I've done 2 Camino coachings in Hyde Park, always including the tree. Yeah.
And I often walk past it, and I normally send you a picture of it every time I do walk past it.
Yeah. And I think with the fun thing was it was like with my Camino coaching neighbor, partner, friend Michael, who at that time was also coaching with you. We had made this creation. Let's go to see Steve Hardison in London. And I remember I took my wife, and we had an Airbnb close by. And then so basically I said, I'm gonna be there. And she was touristing London, and we met for the first time in person. And it was a beautiful first in-person encounter. And if I look back, several followed afterwards, which made which was for me a good indication that yes, you can start coaching effectively on Zoom and make it digital, and then creating an in-person experience is another 10x dimension.
Yeah. We met at the opening of your office where you're standing right now.
Yes, you came with your wife to be at
your birthday.
Yeah, my 50th birthday opening of the. You stopped in the summer. We created a Camino coaching experience along the Camino at Vice, the beautiful church, and.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's three times.
And then last summer on your way to France, you stopped at my house at
4 times. Correct. That's the most recent one. Yes,
the most recent one, and we had this beautiful coaching session under my favorite beech tree. No, it wasn't. How do you call the tree? But anyway, with the red leaves overlooking the Lago Maggiore.
Yeah. And I think that's another thing as well is the importance of nature, which is why, of course, your Camino walks are so, I think, expansive for people, is because the expansiveness of that vista encourages an expansiveness internally of the internal thinking landscape. Definitely there's an energetic there. I also find that with seascapes as well, because the horizon is so open and expansive.
So if you look in our coaching journey, what is the areas where you would say this is the turf where it was becoming maybe scary, or the areas I hesitated to lean into?
This is the interesting part. Yes.
My shadow sides. Which shadow sides were the ones that
super easy question to answer. And that is owning your greatness. And you giving yourself permission to consistently be around people who can really see and appreciate and invest in that greatness. Simple. You have a wonderful tendency to be the person at the top of the balcony with the bed sheet over the edge of the balcony, dangling it down to help people to get up to the balcony that you're at, because you've got this expansive vista from this balcony. You want others to see it and to hear it and to feel it. And I don't think that quality should ever go. This book that you're writing will also serve many of those people, because the insights I'll gain from reading it, listening to this interview maybe, will land with them, and it'll accelerate them on their journey, and they might, advance quickly off the back of one insight. Fantastic. However, for you to continue, let's say, to be at different balconies and to continue to be able to help people up to that next balcony, you also need to be in a space where you're looking upwards, and in rooms, with people who excite you, who scare you maybe a little bit, around potential clients who have got businesses maybe that scare you a little, or they have a certain vision that you haven't yet normalized to, etc., etc. But to just recognize that it's nothing to do with doings. These are all doings.
Yeah, the conceptual difference between being, doing. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. You've got the beingness. You've got the beingness, you've got the stillness, you've got the reflection, you've got the heart-centeredness, you've got the compassion, you've got the gratitude, you've got everything. All of those qualities give you the ability to serve energetically through your beingness in any room that you could possibly imagine being in. That is both your greatest gift to the world, and it's also the one that I kick you up the behind most about activating as well.
Yeah. This is a red thread. If looking through, especially the last year that we worked together, this was constantly you're challenging me, stepping into visibility, owning the space, owning into the sense of how am I entering a room? And yes, I do admit it's still a phase where this is still an expansive phase. Stepping into these spaces and owning the energy that is connected with this.
And I think it's a journey a lot of coaches have to work through, because when you're working with clients, you don't necessarily want you don't want to be leading them in the sense of projecting onto them. You want to kind of have your arm around them, so to speak, metaphorically, and you want to be
walking side by side rather than one leads the other. Yes.
Exactly that. You're walking side by side, and you're pointing out certain things, and you're holding up a mirror now and again and saying, "Are you sure?" and etc., etc. So it's a co-creation of that person's future through how they are in the present. That is what it is, consciously. However, in regards then to one's own progression as a coach, things like visibility, things like thought leadership, these qualities are important, because ultimately what the world needs is more conscious leaders. And it's not a natural tendency for a coach to be that conscious leader because of what I just said. But it's also important for their own progression to be that conscious leader. So there's somewhat of a conflict, I think, going on for a lot of coaches. And I think it's just recognizing those different modalities and stepping into the modality, that most serves in a particular situation at a particular time. If you're with a client, then yeah, you're co-creating with them. If you're in a room, then maybe that room needs you to step up and be the conscious leader and voice what you actually believe in. And then often, of course, people go, I want to spend some time with that person.
Yeah. And this is also what nudged me in this book. I mean, I had, when I had it was a cold call connection on LinkedIn. And I was already writing back, hey, I'm not interested in writing a book. But then I kind of slowed down and my inner voice said, let's have a conversation. And I realized that it became this playful energy around it. And you know what? If it's so easy for me, I'm being interviewed, that gives me the rough cut of the book. I can fill in I can fill it in. And now being in the process, there's a lot of joy, energy, ideas flowing through. And I'm almost like somebody took me the cable car up to the first level of the mountain. And now I only have to walk the ridge of the mountain. I don't have to do the heavy, steep up climbing all the way to above the tree line, because I have somebody doing it. Some of the heavy work, the timely work, is done from their side. And so it becomes more like a dance. And my intention is to release the book by 4th of May when this walk will have its 8th anniversary. At least a digital version of it, and see if I even can get it, Amazon print, whatsoever. So you always said, hey, if it's fun and playful, do it. Don't do it if it's only heavy. And I think this is where I found a way for myself to get this book created. At least the current phase is very fun and easy. And interviewing my clients, interviewing you, creates another level of energy, and maybe, yes, it differs a little bit from focusing on creating new clients, though I believe this way is a digital version, an IP version that can create future connections, invitations, ideas that I would never be able to do in a one-on-one setting at that intensity and frequency.
You are an IP company. Book I'm reading at the moment by Carrie Oberrunner and Catherine Rubino. I know Carrie. And many companies, a bit like the McDonald's model, McDonald's is a burger joint, but it's a property business. And
an IP, they know how to do things with people that are 16-year-old.
Exactly, yeah. And it's great to see that you're actually releasing the IP that you've built up to some degree, at least in this book. Let me ask you a question. What would you not want to be in this book? Or what feels uncomfortable to be in the book?
I think I can answer it more in the sense, what is currently not written yet? Yeah. So I've been going through all of my Camino, and the section 7 right now, I call it the Primitivo towards Santiago. I call it the spiritual part. And so far, I am still collecting ideas on the spiritual side of it. While in the one-on-one closed setting, I have no hesitation to share my way to see the world or energize. I feel the energy. I mean, also referring to my angels that I consult when I'm in coaching or when I step into coaching. Very often I'm in a channel mode. This is very easy for me to share when we are one-on-one in a room. It would feel uneasy stepping in front of a room of 100 people, all from a business section, like CFOs, CEOs, all in the business world. Sharing something like that would feel very awkward to me. Well, in the space of Mind Valley or some of the learning groups or groups where this is rather common, I don't hide. There's no need to hide. But stepping into like a hardcore business setup and showing the flag of spirituality, the way I perceive being connected, I have a lot of emotional equivalence to conceptual truth. And in my world, very often this is about radical honesty. speaking what I feel in the body, slowing that person in front of me down to that, you know what? Yeah, it could be you're racing with your thoughts. But if you really feel into it, really slow down, I call it slowing down to the speed of love, and you really feel this situation, what becomes true? And revealing this truth very often becomes very inconvenient or sometimes even scary. And having gone through this, I know it's very loving, because once you accept it, and I have the 5 A's that you have taught me, I use there, being aware of the situation, being able to receive, accept it, hold it as, oh yeah. And then coming from an authentic place, authentically committing to being of service, being in presence, being in truth, creates this universal abundance. There's no boundary. There's an illusion. You and me, a separation is an illusion that we have created to master some way the way we work. But if we could shift that into actually, yeah, we are both part of a universal experience, that would allow us to really step in the 5th A, the audacious action. And still have that as a reminder here on my desk.
I love the way you've reframed that under the model and I've created, and you're spot on. Yeah, you're spot on. But the question is, using the Ikigai circles, what the world needs more of. What does the world need more of? Does it need more of that hard-edged business, boardroom energy? Or does it need more of that heart-centeredness, the love mode, the reflective thinking, the willingness to slow down enough so you can listen to intuitions, you can be more open to wider signals?
Yeah, and it's the intuition, and I mean, at some point you'd called me out. Yeah, it was like November the year before. Hey, Martin, your business is off. I was running and and somehow the fruits, the results were not as strong as they were in different times. I started and so on.
Yeah.
And as I had stopped doing my controlling, my tracking at a meticulous level as I'd done before, I didn't see the shift coming until my cache was empty.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think you have
doing mode. You got into doing mode, and as a result, your being had become fragmented.
Yeah, I was in doing mode, and I was serving focus on coaches. And I had an interesting observation. While coaching, I have a very big toolbox and I'm very effective in coaching. I wanted them to climb up the towel, to come to the balcony at the level of, hey, you know what? Up here, coaching is really fun. It's a fun business. What I didn't calculate into that, coming from a heart, serving people that I love, that do a similar service, serving the world and so on, that creating a business actually is a 2 million steps thing. This was a 2 million steps journey.
Yeah.
It's not, oh, I walk one day and then I know how to do it.
Yeah.
Even after 44 days being on the journey, yeah, it's still something you can still learn. I can still reflect. I can still improve. It was a 22 million steps for, no, I'm not going to go back to corporate. And somewhere I said, you know what, I'm going to serve coaches. But the coaches don't go up the ladder from a financial perspective as quickly. They can if you give them time, but they don't go as quickly. The result doesn't show as quickly as if I work with CFOs, entrepreneurs, people that run a business. Because if I slow them down for 2 hours or 3 hours, and we go into silence and deep connection, they make a little shift and I let them go. And the little shift is enough for them to, they accelerate on their own. They go back into business mode tomorrow, and 3 weeks out, it's almost hard to catch them because they're in business mode. But the result between session 1 and session 2 is so enormous. It's like so far outpacing, outreaching the coaches that I love as human beings, but business-wise, they're not creating that lever. You always said, hey, value of coaching
Well,
is the impact.
we need to make a distinction here because, of course, you're a coach, and we've just spent some time talking about your amazing growth as a coach. And the distinction is this: you came to coaching with a lot of that process and systems skill set highly developed because of your previous work. So a lot of the success metrics were there. And you're also in coaching for the right reasons as well. And a lot of people don't have that background of that systems and business acumen. And they equally, not all, but a lot are in the coaching business for the creation of money rather than the actual service of their clients.
Yes.
So there's some important distinctions, I think, to make.
Thank you for sharpening this. Yeah.
But the real capture is the +3 -3, because
yes,
the -3 is a -3 +3 is a model that I've taught you, and the -3 is really us 3 years ago, and those clients can be great foundational clients, but the ones that actually allow us to progress not just our businesses, but progress as human beings, as spiritual beings as well, are the +3s, the ones who in some aspects of life are further progressed than us. And even though they choose us as a guide for certain aspects, we also learn from them, and there's a co-creation, genuine co-creation. So I think the period you speak about was just a period where you just had a bit too much -3 going on, and you'd lost that kind of inspirational element of the +3s.
Yeah. And to speak right now, it's a lot more. I see it a lot more with +3 clients, and things are evolving. They take different speed, and they show up in a different way. So therefore, this is. I love the whole thing because it's a constant evolution, constant learning, and so that's why it's always, for me, always a great learning to spend time with you and other coaches that have that energy and that mindset. And so, in the spirit of time, let's capture this from your perspective. Is there an area that it makes sense to have another question on or look into that we haven't covered yet?
I think the obvious one is where you see your future trajectory as a coach. That's the obvious one. You've come from a solid corporate background. You learned a lot of skills, a lot of really useful skills, particularly for the business side of coaching, I think, and for serving business leaders. You made that big transformation, which the Camino was part of that. All of those steps were necessary to make that move from corporate into coaching. You've had guidance to get to where you're at now. I think the obvious one is, like, for you, where does all of this lead? What is going to be the real mark that you leave on this world from all of this work?
Yeah, and in some way, I am in the process of finding it out, or creating it.
Sure.
And for me, it's right now. It's a reflection point. I'm writing the book, getting things together. Things I can also sense a certain, where's my energy leaning towards, and I do sense most of my my energy going towards meeting people that are +3 entrepreneur business people that have that thirst for how, like, connecting to a more spiritual being. I have a new client coming up, and we made an agreement that he will not start a new company until September, because he exited and got money, and he was immediately offered another opportunity. And I said, you know what? I'm happy to coach you under one condition. You allow yourself I call it caterpillar phase, so that you can You can eat and try and explore and play and do, and you don't start a new business until September. Can we have that? Yeah, am I not allowed to speak? Yeah, you can do the daily gigs, but you're not allowed to create something that has like an engine. Yeah, if it's just for play, showing up and make something, it's okay. So he accepted. Okay, and now he's off for 2 months to the US to play in a big playground for adults with AI and things and learning and so on. And for me, this is the point, being in the space where people, rather than continuing their normal runway, stop them, slow them down and say, yeah, slow them down. And then what do you really, really, really want to leave a mark and change? And in his case, I'm sure that he will create a new company at some point, but it was really about, let me be the human, let me come from a human place, not for shareholder value, investment whatsoever. And I think this is where I'm more and more attuned to that. I have a CEO, he's in the process right now of whether he was on the street to become the CEO of a group. And it became evident that they wanted somebody else. And so he is now in the process saying, well, what does it mean for me? I say, slow down. What do you really want to create? And so he comes from a place of very, very from inside. This is how I speak. I speak it out openly. And if the other person likes it or not, I don't really care. If they like it or if they want it, let's create something. If they want something different, well, then let go. And I think this with or without you energy, owning, coming from heart, coming from integrity, not losing any energy around the integrity. This is the game I love playing, and people in my space, they succeed, or for them it becomes easier and easier to step from this energy. And there is CFOs of mid-sized companies that I found this could actually be another area, because very often they have to balance the business side and the family side. And they were equipped to run up the books. They're great analytical. And very often they're missing the practical leadership side to lead the organization and lead the family. And this is where my intersections are coming together. And I currently I coach a CFO who is running a family business, and it's fascinating to see his impact on the business, the leadership, the family, and his own situation. And he does it 100x on the family side, and he does a 20x impact on his personal finances. And this is where I say, and I'm sure there's more of them out there that are doing the numbers, and they have been doing the numbers game for long, and they're good at it, sometimes at the price of not nurturing their heart, their relationship, their truth, their spiritual being. And as they're good at it, they will most likely continue serving the organization and the family because they do good results, but they feel empty. They feel almost that their light is going off. Like, I always light a candle, and their candle is kind of burning at the end. And this is my invitation, is to invite them to spend time with me so that we can find a way that they can step into their being, step into their power, and light their energy and light their candle. And in some way, I always use the metaphor, the lighthouse, so that they can become a lighthouse for who they are being, as a spiritual person and as a CFO or finance person or a leader of their organization.
And as somebody who's not just your coach, but somebody who cares deeply about you, this is my biggest invite to you moving forwards, is for you to become that lighthouse for those people, so that they in turn can become the lighthouse for their people. You're spot on. The corporate world is still largely void of this energy that you speak of, that is so important because it is at the essence of who we are. And if you can be that light house that reminds them of that fact and invites them into that re-engage with that energy that you unfortunately had to leave corporate to find. And then they might not necessarily need to do that, but they do need somebody, a leader. Of course, a lighthouse is no better metaphor for a leader. Yeah, they need you. So great work.
Yeah, if you were to list a few criteria of people that would be served best by me, other than what I just shared, what were the 3 or 4 markers that would go up in your light and say, this is a candidate that should go and have a conversation with Martin?
Obviously, the obvious one is somebody is a CFO, because you understand that mindset, the controller mindset, deeply. So that would be one word. Or equivalent. Yeah, or equivalent. I think they have to have at their heart a playful nature, because you, and I saw this at the beginning, you are a child bubbling underneath that surface. You're a playful man, and the sandbox of corporate may allow them to play in a certain way, but possibly they're not playing as fully or as widely as they could play. I think the other element that shows for me as well is ambition. Ambition is often portrayed as a negative word because it's over attached to materialistic gain. But that's just one element of ambition. You have an ambition to actually release the potential of these people, to help them move from this void they may be feeling to a more spiritual reference to life, to more playfulness in their work. You can be ambitious in that pursuit, and the money might come from that, but the ambition is in that vein. So yes, possibly the CFO equivalent executive, the playfulness, the ambition. Another word as well is probably linked to playfulness and ambition is creativity. You're a very creative man, and I think your ideal client would also have a creation that, again, is probably somewhat untapped at the moment, unfulfilled at the moment.
Animation to sketch, yes.
Yeah. And then the final thing, I think, is fun. Just that word fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. For some reason,
Joy, fun, joy, laughter.
for some reason, seriousness has become COVID. I don't think is the biggest epidemic. I think maybe seriousness is the biggest epidemic we have.
Which leads to loneliness, yes, exactly. Yeah.
It leads to attachment to the wrong things, to outcomes rather than the process and the play. And then it leads to the evaluation of oneself based upon doing rather than being. And then we just become these unhappy vessels of doing that constantly evaluate ourselves and frustrated because we never take off our to-do list in a day. Whereas, of course, we are creative, playful.
List, yeah.
And your biggest, I think your biggest working ground moving forwards is just like suspending, and I mean this, suspending judgment, yours and whoever else's, and putting yourself in uncomfortable places, in groups and so on. Because just think yourself, if you had had that person in your group at that time, just before you were thinking about leaving corporate, how valuable could that person have been to you in, first of all, acknowledging that what you were feeling was not wrong, and acknowledging that actually what you wanted more in life was valid and actually a reflection of your true humanity, and acknowledging that actually there's multiple pathways to achieve that, and then in helping you along that process. So, you might still have walked the Camino on your own. That might well have happened, but at least you would have done it with a guidance and a clarity. So those people need guides like you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what I would add a filter that they take ownership of their personal changes. They invest their own money, maybe creatively through converting variable pay or whatever, but they take the commitment, I pay from my own pocket, or at least partially from my own pocket. Because too often I've seen in corporate this, oh, I want this from daddy boss, is given as a pacifier rather than a transformer. So thank you for mindset, playfulness, ambitious, creative, joyful. Curiously, interestingly, it's my key saboteurs from the positive intelligence are the controller, the restless, and the high achiever. So my controllers are also my best clients.
They are, yes, because you have painted and forged a path,
yeah,
that is inspirational to them. So well done,
Chris. Now it's been 90 minutes almost, so thank you very much for your abundance. And I don't recall a single session, maybe one because you had to go to a doctor's appointment, but you have been always extremely generous with your giving your time, and this is what I really appreciate your great heart, your abundance, and let me express my deep gratitude for serving me all these 100 plus hours. And I'm looking forward to the next time we step into the game and play some long paths.
Thank you, Martin. It really has been a genuine privilege. You are somebody that is far more than a client. You have contributed to my life and my growth in a way, I think to a degree but to a degree you will never know. And I think your belief in in me as your guide has been incredibly affirming for me in my own development. So I want to thank you for that. And yeah, long may the play continue.
Yeah, and one business idea is still not created yet. Yeah, your group for the next level here.
It's coming. It's closer than it's been.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, Chris, thank you very much. And let's wrap up the recording here. And I promise you that I will share with you what will be coming from the book so that you can have a look and see, hey, I like this. I want to be part of this, or I'd rather not be. The way I sensed the session today was so light, so energetic. I think it would serve us both to have that visible. So therefore, if you're okay that I convert this into a podcast or a video, then I will, before I do this, I'll still get your permission first because I want to make sure this is kept on a professional level.
Sure. Yeah. I appreciate that. And I think there's a lot that goes on in a coaching space, some of which should stay private. And then there's a lot that goes on that will actually benefit so many more people if it's made visible. And I think what we've captured here today in the journey is something that would really serve many people. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. What if your greatest expansion isn't found in business growth, though in who you are becoming? Thank you for joining this journey. If today's conversation sparked something in you, I invite you to slow down, reflect, and maybe even walk a little in self-reflection. To go deeper into these themes, I invite you to explore my book about walking the Camino de Santiago and how this has impacted my professional life and the way I serve my clients. The book is called The Leader's Camino, From Exit to Expansion, a pilgrimage through your own business, reinventing yourself to thrive. You find it on Amazon. Please subscribe to this podcast and feel free to share these episodes with someone ready to shift. And remember, transformation starts with the first step. One Camino.